Good evening, Tigers. It is our Tuck-In Tuesday, and tonight I'm going to read you a story, but I'm feeling a little under the weather, so you'll have to bear with me. The story that I'm going to read you tonight is The Bad Case of Stripes. Camellia Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her other friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what she was going to wear. There were just so many people that she wanted to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none of them seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then she screamed. "Ah!" Her mother ran into the room and she screamed too. "Oh my heavens," she said. "You're completely covered in stripes." This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camilla's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "I feel fine," Camilla answered. "But just look at me." "You get back in bed this instant," her mother ordered. "You're not going to school today." Camilla was relieved, but she didn't want to miss the first day of school. She was afraid what all the other kids would say, though, and she had no idea what she was going to wear with these crazy stripes. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camilla. "Most extraordinary!" he exclaimed. "I have never seen anything like that. Are you having any coughing, any sneezing, a runny nose, aches, pains, dizziness, anything like that?" "No," Camilla told him. "I feel fine." "Well then," Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, "I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help with those stripes in a few days. And if it doesn't, well, you know where to reach me." The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Crayon, the Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried the best to act as everything was normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned to red, white, and blue, and she broke out in all stars. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots!" And sure enough, Camilla turned purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, "Checkerboard!" and a pattern of squares then covered her skin. Soon everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than you can change a TV channel. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream," he said. "I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school tomorrow. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting all these calls from angry parents. They're afraid that those stripes might be contagious." Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everybody liked her, but now nobody even wanted to be in the same room as her. Her father tried to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart?" he asked. "No, thank you," sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans. But she had been laughed at enough for one day. I wonder why her friends don't like lima beans. Well, yes, I see," Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. "I think I'd better bring in the specialist. We'll be right there." About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them. "This is Dr. Grope, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young." The specialist went to work on her. They squeezed her and jabbed her and tapped her and tested her. It was very uncomfortable. "It's not the mumps," concluded Dr. Grope, "or the measles. It's definitely not chicken pox." "Or sunburn," said Dr. Young. "Try these," said the specialist. They handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. "Take 1 of each before you go to bed." Then they filed out the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. That night, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different, but when she got dressed, her clothes just didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant, multicolored pill with a face on it. I hope I don't turn out like that. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called, but this time, instead of specialists, he brought experts. Dr. Gourd and Mr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in all of the land. And once again, Camilla was poked and prodded and looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers, and they huddled together and they whispered. Dr. Gourd finally spoke. It might be a virus. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. Or possibly some form of bacteria, said Mr. Mellon. Out popped squiggly little black bacteria balls. Or it could be a fungus. And then Camilla was covered with different colored fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camilla, then at each other. We need to go over these numbers again at the lab. We'll call you when we know something. The experts don't have a clue. By now, the TV news had found out all about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house, telling the story of the bizarre case of this incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out in the front of her lawn. Her parents probably aren't very happy with that. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and even a long furry tail. Nothing was working. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. Close your eyes, she said. Breathe deeply and become one with your room. Oh my gosh, I wish you wouldn't have said that, Camilla groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth. Her nose was a dresser, and the two paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran out of the house. What are we going to do? Mrs. Cream said. It just keeps getting worse and worse. And she began to sob. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the front door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. Excuse me, she said brightly, but I think I can help. She went into Camilla's room and looked all around. My goodness, she said with a shake of her head. What we have here is a bad case of stripes, one of the worst I have ever seen. She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. I wonder what those are. Here, she said, these might do the trick. Are those magic beans? Asked Mrs. Cream. Oh my, no, replied the kind old woman. There's no such thing as magic beans. These are just plain old lima beans. I bet you'd like some, wouldn't you? She asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big heaping plateful of lima beans more than just about anything. But no one likes lima beans, especially me, she said. Yuck! Oh dear, the woman said. I guess I was wrong about you. She put the beans back in her bag and started toward the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good. And being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she was been going through. She finally just couldn't stand it. Wait, she cried. The truth is, I really do love lima beans. I thought so, said the old woman with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Said Camilla. Suddenly, the branches, the feathers, the squiggly tails, they all began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. "I'm cured!" she shouted. "Yes," said the old woman. "I knew the real you was in there somewhere." She patted Camilla on the head. Then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Hope I can be cured. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never, ever had even a touch of stripes again. I think there's a lesson that the author wants us to learn about this. What lesson do you think the author wants us to learn about this story from Camilla? Go talk about it with your parents. Have a great night, guys. See you tomorrow.